Well, again, I think it's useful to establish the facts correctly before we address this issue. PSX will seek to increase the number of listings, attract new listings to PSX. But again, the facts are that in terms of number of listed companies per million investors or million population in a country, Pakistan compares very well with Bangladesh, Vietnam. I haven't looked at India, but I would suspect that our ratio of listed companies to population in Pakistan compares favorably well with India. But I know for a fact that it compares well with Vietnam and Bangladesh. These are emerging market peers. These should be some type of benchmarks for us. So I'm not saying that we're not going to try to attract more, but I don't agree with the assertion there's a dearth of listed companies in Pakistan. Now, what will attract more companies to list on PSX? I think one major factor is the valuation of these companies. Today, if I'm a CFO of a private company and I have the choice between debt financing, private equity, or going to the stock market, I look at the stock market and I see, price earnings ratio is 9. As a CFO, I think I'll seek other means of financing my company, cheaper means of financing my company. But if with the influx of new retail investors in the market, one of the effects will be that the price earnings ratio will go up 10, 11, 12, perhaps towards the emerging market average, which I believe is around 16, 17. Now, as our price earnings ratio increases to those levels, all of a sudden CEOs and CFOs of private companies will say, wow, now it's attractive. The idea of selling shares to the public to raise capital is attractive because I can sell my shares at 17 times earnings as opposed to 9 times earnings. So I think that will be a major factor in convincing private companies to come to PSX for listing and to raise capital. I think the first part of your question had to do with PSX organization. Well, I'll address that. We have a very ambitious plan, as I said earlier, to increase the retail investor base tenfold. That won't happen by itself. We need to have very ambitious objectives, goals, program, roll out awareness campaigns, and as I said earlier, work on investor protection, introducing new products, introducing a new IT platform. That requires organizational capacity, and that's my current priority, is to increase the capacity of PSX to manage projects and programs. So we're currently hiring a chief operating officer. I think it's been advertised in the newspapers, and I'm happy to report that we have 268 applications for the position of chief operating officer. So among those, I'm very confident that we'll find the superstar we're looking for as chief operating officer. So that person will take care of day-to-day operations, freeing up my time as a CEO to concentrate more on strategic and market development initiatives. And now to help me in those areas, we're also advertising 2 more positions. One is head of marketing and business development, and I can tell you what we'll do in that department. And separately from that, another position which will report to me is head of product management and research. Now, once we've done that and structured the departments below those heads, we'll have the capacity to initiate a lot of programs, be it new products to list here, helping the industry list ETFs, provide value-added services to listed companies, be more active in talking to private companies, trying to convince them to come to PSX, be far more active than we are today in investor awareness campaigns. So there's a lot of things that we're not quite equipped to do at PSX today, and that we're currently building a team to roll out these initiatives. So you should see us becoming a lot more active in the second half of 2018. Well, you addressed a number of very different issues in your question. I'll try to address them one by one. You mentioned speculators, active traders in the market. We like them. And as a market, we hope to attract more people who will trade actively in our market. And in doing so, they will help bring liquidity to our market. That said, that is not what will transform PSX and will transform Pakistan's capital market. What will transform this market is when the 20 to 40 million strong middle-class Pakistan starts investing on PSX. That will transform the stock market, it will transform Pakistan's capital market, and will have a huge impact on economic development and capital formation in Pakistan. That's what we're after. So again, two different but both vital types of participants in the market. Speculators, those we tend to have today, and again, we want more of them, and we'll take measures to attract more of them. But really, the real target is to convince middle-class Pakistanis to invest. Again, put 5, 10, 20% of their revenue every year, invest it for the long term in the stock market. We will introduce investment vehicles that are appropriate for these people, including mutual funds and ETFs. We will take measures to improve their confidence in the market and improve investor protection. We can talk about that later. And we will take measures to make it far simpler to go through the account opening and account documentation process in Pakistan. So PSX objective is to go from 250,000 investors on PSX to what I think would be a more reasonable number of 2.5 million investors. We want to multiply the retail investor base in Pakistan by 10. That will have a fundamental impact on volume. These people will bring volume to the exchange, they will bring liquidity, and they will have an impact also on the price of PSX listed equities. I said it earlier, Pakistan equities, companies listed on Pakistan Stock Exchange are very affordable. They're cheap in terms, they provide high dividend yield, and they trade at a low price earnings ratio. Pakistanis should buy these companies. Well, I will concede that to you, that as an industry, and by industry I mean PSX as an exchange and those we call the track holders, I'm not sure we've done everything we can do to improve the access to the stock market, and that's something that we will very aggressively address starting in 2018. So we have a simple three-pronged plan to address middle-class Pakistanis. First is to improve investor protection in Pakistan. We want to structure investor protection in Pakistan so that investors know that their money, their capital is as safe invested with a PSX stockbroker as it would be invested in government savings bond. Okay? We know how to do that. We have the resources, we have the expertise, and we will roll out reforms in investor protection in Pakistan to get to that point. Okay? So better investor protection, as I said earlier, simple, accessible investment vehicles for retail investors. Mutual funds are a very good vehicle for first-time investors to get acquainted with the market and start saving and investing in the market. We will also, before the end of 2018, list ETFs, exchange-traded funds, in Pakistan. They are by far the fastest growing investment vehicle worldwide, and we will introduce them to Pakistan. And that, I believe, is the type of product that's required to attract middle-class retail investors to PSX. And finally, I want investors to be able to go through the account opening and document procedure using this in 15 minutes. This is everything we need. You can scan your documents. There are biometrics identification on this. So this is what we need to do. And it's not rocket science. In most markets, this is how you open a brokerage account, and this is how you invest your money. Pakistanis will have the same type of access to the stock exchange. But I think, again, that in all countries, this is a powerful tool to reach out to potential investors and allow them to participate and access the market. And I think it's particularly powerful in Pakistan because it's such a vast country and with regions which are not necessarily well served by physical financial institutions, physical locations, branches of financial institutions. So I think technology, as social media, will play a role in our reaching out to Pakistanis. I'll put that in the international context. Exchanges have become, especially over the past 20 years, global, multinational businesses. Even the New York Stock Exchange, storied New York Stock Exchange, is owned now by a company that you couldn't name. ICE is now the owner of New York Stock Exchange. So this is a global phenomenon. And I think that not only is it desirable, I think it's inevitable that Pakistan will be connected to this global network. And if I had to choose a strategic partner for Pakistan, I would probably choose the Chinese because of the resources, the know-how they have, because they are already all-weather partner for Pakistan. I think the term is very well chosen. So I couldn't imagine better strategic partner for Pakistan Stock Exchange than the Chinese. And if there's an element in that eventually leads to greater regional integration in capital markets, I think that too is positive. And don't forget, the ownership, a stock exchange is a business that provides services to investors and listed companies. Whether the stock exchange is 100% owned by Pakistanis or 60% owned by Pakistanis or 40% owned by Pakistanis is not really relevant to the quality of the service we offer to investors and listed companies. And again, I would make the counter argument. I think it's very positive that we can benefit from the resources and the know-how and the regional connections of our Chinese partners, and we will capitalize on that, including in terms of new products. The Chinese are already in the process of launching a Pakistan ETF, an exchange-traded fund listed in China that will invest exclusively in PSX listed companies. So it's very positive. Yes, so I'll start with investor protection. Two major initiatives on that front. And in both cases, we work in close collaboration with SECP. And this gets a little technical, but the principles are there. I think it's important to understand. Traditionally, exchanges we're in the business of not only managing the stock exchange, but also regulating their members, their participants, as we know them in Pakistan, track holders. Over the past 20 to 30 years, most countries have moved away from that and clearly separated the business of managing the exchange from the regulatory function. Most exchanges in the US and Canada and UK and Japan and in most markets, the exchange is no longer a regulator of brokers. It concentrates on operating and developing the market. That's what we're doing in Pakistan. Not only PSX, but also NCCP, CDC, and PMEX. All of us are going to basically carve out almost all of our regulatory activities and put that into a single, newly formed entity in Pakistan. Along the lines of, again, the US model and the Canadian model and the UK model. So that, as a result of that, you get several major benefits. One, you get a truly independent regulator that is not influenced in any way whatsoever by market participants and is not subject to a risk of conflict of interest, because as an exchange, because the brokers are our main clients, there's a bit of a conflict of interest if we regulate that. So we're moving away from that. So you eliminate the conflict of interest. You concentrate your resources. Instead of having regulatory resources in various entities, you concentrate all that into one single entity. It reduces the burden on brokers who no longer face 3 or 4 different audits in a year. There's one single audit by one regulatory entity. And you result in a more powerful regulator. I think the end result and the main objective is more effective regulation of market players. And so that's one area. I think brokers will be better regulated with more effective and efficient regulation. So that will be a net benefit in terms of protection for investors, reducing the risk of broker default. That risk will go down considerably. It's already gone down a lot in the past few years, simply because the number of brokers in Pakistan has gone down. But that movement will accelerate. So one way is better regulation of stockbrokers. But because stockbroker default can never be completely eliminated, even in Canada, occasionally a broker defaults. When it does happen, what you need, and that's the second part of our strategy, is a well-structured investor protection fund. An investor who loses money to a broker default should be compensated financially by an investor protection fund. So, and in Pakistan, we have all the resources to do that. We already have an investor protection fund, but it's limited in its ability to protect investors. We're going to fundamentally reform the investor protection fund, and as a result, every single investor in Pakistan will see their account up to a certain level. We haven't set the level yet, but it's probably somewhere between 1 and 2 million rupees. Your account will be guaranteed against broker default. So that will considerably improve the investor protection framework for investors. As I said earlier, we want to be able to tell investors that your money, your capital, of course, its market is volatile, but in terms of capital, your capital will be as safe with a PSX stockbroker as it is in government savings bonds. But your annual return is likely to be 20%, whereas savings bonds will pay you what, 6% today? So on the investor protection fund, that is what we're doing. I think there was a second leg to your question. Again, keeping in mind our primary objective. We have other objectives and other programs to meet these objectives, but the primary objective, again, is to multiply tenfold the retail investor base in Pakistan. So we need to introduce products that will attract these people. And in my view, the most powerful product to convince retail Pakistan investors to come to the market is exchange-traded funds. An exchange-traded fund, for those of you in your audience who don't know what it is traded on the stock exchange. You buy and sell it like a stock, but instead of buying an individual company, you buy an entire basket of companies. So it's like a mutual fund listed on the exchange that replicates the return of KSE 30. So our hope is to launch a KSE 30 index fund that any Pakistani can buy with 10,000 rupees, 100,000 rupees, a million rupees, or 10 million rupees in one transaction. You invest all of your capital in all the companies of the KSE 30, and you are assured of making the same return as if you had invested in each of these 30 companies individually, including dividends. So you receive the annual dividend and you get the capital appreciation in one transaction. So we want to launch equity exchange-traded funds as well as fixed income bond exchange-traded funds. And by combining these two exchange-traded funds, an investor can have a balanced portfolio. So if you think that your portfolio should be equally invested in bonds and stocks, you put half your capital in our bond ETF, half your capital in our equity ETF, and then with a low cost, very accessible way, you can invest your money, and very safe way, you can invest your money in the stock market and the bond market at the same time. So I think those are the products we need to attract middle-class Pakistanis to invest in the market. Because again, and I don't want to take too much time on that, but I think middle-class Pakistanis, those who are not investment savvy, we shouldn't expect them to learn how to analyze financial statements, price earnings ratios, dividend yields. These are notions that the retail investor most of the time doesn't understand. What they do understand is that they need to set money aside every year and invest it in a market that will grow over the long term. That's an ETF, and we'll provide them with an ETF. They don't need to understand company statements. They don't need to analyze the stock market. All they need to do is save on a regular basis, invest in these diversified products, and let it go. And in 30 years, they'll have a very comfortable retirement. First, I'd like to say that I fully agree with your diagnosis of our website. It is not worthy of this stock exchange, and we are currently completely revamping our website. It will take probably a few more weeks for us to go through the process, but I absolutely agree with you. So we'll come up with a brand new website and facilitate access to market information. But that access to market information will improve over time. There's a number of things, the website is one thing, but access to information on that website takes sometimes a little longer to organize. And there is a link with our investment in technology. What drives the information that goes on the website basically is our trading platform. And our trading platform needs to be revamped. In 2018, PSX will completely change. We'll procure a world-class trading platform for companies listed on the exchange, and with that platform will come market surveillance modules and market data modules. So you should see the quality of information coming out of PSX. You should see that increase considerably in 2018. But that's more towards the end of 2018, the trading platform. But in the meantime, we can still improve our website and improve the quality of the data that we put on our website. And again, that is one of the, I mentioned earlier that we're in the process of hiring a head of product management and research. One of the departments reporting to that head will be market data. We'll have dedicated resources at PSX dedicated to producing quality market data available both to the local market as well as to foreign investors. And we'll be working with our stakeholders, including Bloomberg, in improving the quality of our data. I'm a professional stock exchange manager. My business is to manage a stock exchange, not a portfolio. So I would suggest you direct your question to perhaps a stockbroker or an asset manager. But I can tell you one thing, no matter where the global markets and the Pakistan market go over the next few years, our aim is to make sure that our capital market is well equipped to support the economic growth in Pakistan. Personally, I'm relatively optimistic about the global outlook. I'm definitely optimistic about Pakistan, and I believe Pakistanis should buy PSX listed companies. Pakistan went through what is called a bear market last year. A bear market is defined as a decline of 20% or more. That was the first bear market in Pakistan in over a decade. And that compares with an average number of close to 2 bear markets in developed markets. For example, New York goes through a 20% decline a couple of times a decade. So the first thing I'd like to state is that I don't agree with these assertions that Pakistan market is particularly volatile. I don't think it is. And further than that, when the market goes down like 20 or 25% like it did last year, to me, it's an outstanding buying opportunity, especially for us young people like you. You have an investment horizon of 40, 50, 60 years. You need to invest in the stock market for at least 50 years. You shouldn't care too much where the stock market is going in 2 weeks, 2 months, or even 2 years. What should be important to you is the long-term return that you realize in the stock market. And on that front, PSX is an outstanding investment story. Over the past decade, the average annual return in Pakistan has been 20%. That's well above any other asset class here in Pakistan. As far as where the market's going, I am not in the business of making predictions in the short or medium term. In fact, you can't predict where the market is going to go next month or in 6 months. And you shouldn't, the average investor should not speculate on that. The average investor should invest regularly. Every month, every quarter, every year, you should put some money in the stock market and buy and hold for the long term. Anybody who's done that over the past decade has done extraordinarily well in terms of investment returns in Pakistan.